Hi everyone, I will talk about Chaturanga today. Let's start with the feet because those are the least complicated. In Chaturanga, I liked when feet looks good or when it doesn't look like they are somehow unbalanced, not neutral. It's really hard to control what your feet are doing because it's so far away from where you are looking or where you can actually see. What you can do is try to engage and push from them and start the movement from your feet. So whatever your body, your core, your arms are doing, your feet start in a plank, and you can already train for chaturanga in plank. You don't have to really be doing chaturanga per se or the full kind of chaturanga. You can just do planks, so you will not see me too much, but you will see my feet, I hope. So you place your feet just so the heels end up over your fingers or your toes, sorry. You want to use them to push. You can also try to spread the toes a little bit more. There is never enough toe spreading in life. So you just spread your toes a lot. You put the toes down. And if your toes are not that flexible, then maybe the knuckles will be above the ground even in order to have the heel above your toes. And you try to have your heels and your toes approximately hips width. So you don't go too far away from each other, you don't go too close. What you can do to get a little bit more of toes flexibility is to sit on your heels, having your toes tucked. And you can do this every day before you start your practice, and try to have a little bit more engagement there. This is not just like whatever. So you're trying to really press the toes down and sit on your heels. So starting in your plank, placing your heels over your toes, spreading your toes. And then you can imagine that you want to squeeze your legs together. That helps to engage your inner thighs, and also you engage your quadriceps to pull up your kneecaps and to straighten your legs. From there, because your legs are squeezing together, you want to also squeeze your butt to have again a neutrality in your hips, because what that tends to happen in your plank is that your hip flexors take everything, because they are usually the ones that really work, and you think core in your plank or in chaturanga, and that shortens the front body, that shortens the hip flexors. So you want to counter that using your butt muscles, your glutes. So you're squeezing the legs together, and you're thinking core, of course, because you want to go away from the ground. So you have to squeeze the glutes in order to get the straight line. Next, coming up is your core, of course. In your plank, you're trying to squeeze or even suck your belly in, and not just using the muscles that are connecting your upper torso or your ribs and your pelvis, but also the muscle that goes around your waist. That's why what you want to do is not just be here, but also you are trying to pull the belly in as you squeeze the ribs towards your pelvis. From there, moving up towards your shoulders, which are the most important part in your plank, but also in your, of course, in your chaturanga. Your shoulder joint is very special, it's very specific. It's the most mobile joint that you have in your body. It can move in all the directions, and in order to be able to do this joint is very shallow. So you have the shoulder head here from the upper arm bone, which ends in a little head, and then you have the scapula or shoulder blade that has a little kind of very shallow bowl or receiver for this head to come into, And it has to be very shallow in order for the joint to really move in all the directions. And because of this, it's really some kind of easy to dislocate your shoulder joint, because it's very shallow, and if your muscles don't hold it, if your ligaments are a little bit not really fixing your shoulder joint, maybe even because of just how your ligaments are built, because you have a predisposition for hypermobility, then yeah, it can just be easy to dislocate. This is why you want to have strong muscles around your joint. I'm not saying that it's easy to dislocate your shoulder joint in Chaturanga or generally in your life, but it's always good to have the muscles to support it. Even if you get into an accident, or something happens, you slip and you end up falling down, it's always good to have strong muscles, but also the muscles that work properly together. And Chaturangas help us to develop not just strong muscles, but also intelligent muscles that work and cooperate together to keep your shoulder joint safe. This is why, in order to have the proper position, or the right position, or the most safe position, you need to literally push the head of your upper arm bone into that shallow receiver part of your scapula. If you are in a high plank, for example, and you're trying to push all the way away from the ground, your scapula moves to the side, and then basically your upper arm bone comes from below a little bit. Therefore, this is very stable position because it's working with the gravity, right? But if you're in your Chaturanga, your scapula gets flat and horizontal, and it receives the upper arm bone from the side, and therefore, if you don't have enough muscles working to press these two things together, there can be some slipping. So if there is too much gravity, basically, your scapular part of the joint is sliding on top of, or on from the side of your upper arm bone. You don't have to go for a Chaturanga with your whole weight. That's why we use knees on the ground a lot for beginners. And even I use it sometimes, because why? I mean, this is not Olympics. You're not trying to prove yourself to anyone. So if you don't feel like doing Chaturangas full, then it's fine. And also, I like not to go too low with the bend in the elbow. And this is the same principle that applies, for example, in your warriors, or in your side angle pose or warrior 2. Sometimes you don't go too low, right? So you don't go all the way with your thigh to be horizontal with the ground. And sometimes you just stay here because it's much easier for the muscles, and you build strength even here if you properly engage your feet into the ground. And sometimes you want to push yourself and you go a little bit lower. So why you want to go in Chaturanga? Why would you go in Chaturanga all the way, almost touching the ground, and bending your elbow more than 90 degrees? Why, if you are tired, you don't try to not go that low, the same as in your warriors? So maybe you end up here and have the proper engagement. And okay, so what is the proper engagement? First is that you want to squeeze the elbow towards your upper body, because this squeezing helps to engage all the muscles that push the upper arm bone head in towards your scapula. So if you are here and you have your elbows away from the ground, and you are even hunching your shoulders towards your ears, then obviously there is no engagement. And also, it's really bad for your trapezius muscle that is overworking anyway the whole time, whatever you are doing. This part needs a lot of relief. That's why we're trying to slide the scapulas down the spine, using the muscles that support it from below, not from above. And then you want to use all the muscles that press that arm bone in towards your scapula, in towards your body. One thing that helps you for a little bit of that elbow pressing towards your upper body is if you turn your fingers a little bit outside, away from each other. So if you have your fingers already turning in, of course your elbow go to the sides and they don't squeeze. So this already starts to help you. And then in order to engage all the muscles and everything really a lot, I like to use my fingertips and really use them and squeeze them into the mat. If you also turn your fingers out and you don't have such flexible wrists, this helps you also to go to that plunge at the beginning of Chaturanga that you need to do. What you want to think is to bring more weight forward or your chest even forward. So you start from your plank position, you engage your feet, spread your toes, squeeze your legs, squeeze your butt and your core, and then turning your fingers a little bit out, finding a little bit of protraction in your shoulders, so pressing through your palms and rounding the upper back, which is already very nice plank, a very stable plank. But in order to do Chaturanga, you need to bring your shoulder blades a little bit closer towards each other, so you have to start opening your chest, opening your collarbones, and you need to shift forward. So once your elbow bend, they end up above your wrist and not here. The same principle that applies to your knees, where you don't want to have a too acute angle in your joint. It's just a better position, it's better form to have the joints stacked one on top of the other. One thing that can help you to motivate yourself is to have a block or something that you can hold between your forearms. So you bring the block. If it's a light block like this one, it's easier. And you squeeze it in between your forearms, place the palms down, and you can start from your tabletop position with your knees moving a little bit more back. You lean forward, squeeze the block, then you bend the elbows as you reach your chest forward. And there is a little cheat almost, because you might end up on your elbows even with your upper body, because the block is really small sometimes for most of the people. But this is the proper kind of way how to squeeze them. So remember that when you place your palms a little bit more away from each other. You engage your butt, your core, squeeze the legs together, lean forward, and then you keep squeezing all the way. Then you press up. One thing that you can try to do is, as I said, not going too low, and from there maybe pushing up, or if you want, you just untuck your toes one at a time or both at the same time, and you go into an upward dog from there. So try not to go all the way down with your belly, going into your Chaturanga wherever it is, and from there not collapsing and then trying to push all the way down, all the way up from the ground, but rather going only halfway and then into your upward dog. Good, guys. I hope you have a nice day, and I hope your Chaturanga got better or will get better soon. Bye.